When we returned to school in the fall of '67, a lot of things had changed since the spring. The war had picked up considerably.
People were getting angrier and angrier and angrier about the war and the draft and the news that they were seeing, the images on television, the level of violence, the body counts, the bombings. It was all mounting.
In the week ended last Saturday, 171 Americans were killed in combat, 977 were wounded.
193 Americans died in combat last week.
U.S. combat deaths in the war now total more than 14,000.
More and more people were trying to make a decision about where they would stand in relation to Vietnam. I was aware for the first time that there was a beginning of some kind of a movement. It was kind of mystifying, and it was also a bit threatening to me because I thought, what's going to happen here?
Everyone was trying to get your attention, and one might be, a petition to sign against the war in Vietnam. And, I had very suspicious feelings of these folks. If my government said we needed to be in Vietnam, then I believed we needed to be in Vietnam.
I remember a group of us gathering and looking at the Daily Cardinal and seeing that Dow was coming to campus to recruit, which prompted a discussion that we had to start preparing for that.
The best known product that Dow was making was saran wrap. The Dow company began making napalm in 1965. The board chairman, the CEO, had served in the armed services in World War II. That made it rather natural that when your government wanted you to make some stuff, even though it was very nasty stuff, that you made it without any question.
Napalm was this hideous jellied gas burning at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
It didn't just kill you, it tortured you. It has a complete reference to Zyklon B, the gas they use in the concentration camps. It felt like chemical warfare at its worst.
Napalm was the symbol of the war. A year earlier, there'd been a huge story in Ramparts magazine talking about the effects that napalm had on what it said were millions of children in Vietnam who'd been burned by it.
The horror of napalm made an indelible impression on all of us, and especially on students. When they discovered that the University of Wisconsin had invited Dow Chemical Company to come to the campus to recruit. And the man who was to become the chancellor of the university shortly thereafter, William Sewell, he said, why can't they go and recruit off campus like they do in most places?
Sewell was an opponent of the Vietnam War. He'd voted against allowing Dow to recruit on campus, but he was outvoted.
The faculty endorsed their right to recruit, and the response of students who cared was that they had to do something if the faculty was not going to take a reasonable stand on this.
People want to go work for Dow, that's their business. However, to use the university buildings to, in effect, provide a subsidy to Dow by providing them the space, we thought was absolutely wrong.
I didn't want to see any more Vietnamese children running around with their clothes burned off. There were millions of us who thought that if we put in enough time and made enough noise, that it would make it impossible for the government to keep sending young men to Vietnam.
Dow,
produces napalm. And I ask you to think it over, to go to your newspapers, explain what your position is. They don't understand you. They don't understand what kind of weapon this is.
It gets back to the question of, do we have a responsibility to stand up at some point and say, wait, no, this is wrong. And if we say no enough times in these instances, maybe we can have an effect.
This demonstration was going to be different. There was going to be an escalation of tactics and an escalation of personal risk. The goal was to obstruct the recruitment by Dow of students who were looking for jobs after graduation. And we knew that that was a violation of the law. You might end up in jail. You could find yourself expelled from school. And in those days, you know, expulsion from school could be a ticket to the war.
We knew, of course, there was going to be a demonstration in the Commerce Building. But I think there was a strong feeling that, well, if they want to block it, let's just let them block it for a while and see if we can wait them out. I did notice that there were some legislators over on the side observing this, and I thought to myself, this is not going to go down well with them. And I felt that there was going to be a reckoning at some time in the future.
The University of Wisconsin was a short walk from the state capitol, where the legislature and the governor met daily. Governor Knowles was on the telephone excoriating the chancellor of the university, William Sewell, for not taking action against these disruptive students.
There was sort of an unwritten expectation that Madison police would take care of patrolling Madison, and that the University of Wisconsin police officers would take care of the campus.
Most of the city cops were from the east side of Madison, the working class side of town. To them, the university on the west side was a foreign world.
We would run into students on State Street where a person like me who's from a farming community began to realize that there was a different society out there as far as students. A lot of them from the East Coast, a lot of money, new cars, nothing they couldn't buy.
I used to ride the bus to work, and there was this one guy who'd get on the bus, and he would just condemn and scream and holler about the government and about how mean they were. And I just looked at him, I said, you know, if they ever wanted to drop the atom bomb as a test, they could drop it right on top of the university. I wouldn't give a shit. He never said another word.
They were young and dumb, you know, and they didn't really have any idea what they were doing, and they thought this was a way for them to show their patriotism, and it wasn't. If you want to run this by anarchy, which is what they were trying to do, then you have a fight on your hands.